Our next speaker is going to be Chang Hee. Chang Hee is a design engineer and researcher currently based in London. With different artifacts as mediums, he pursues a variety of design experimentations with the desire to broaden possible future design channels. His experiments in this field have led him to investigate a variety of sources, such as synesthesia, human-computer interaction, HCI, data translation, playful things, robotics, industrial design, and so on. Chang Hee Lee is one of the UK Design Council's Ones to Watch. This list of the 70 most talented emerging designers in the UK was announced as part of the Design Council's 70th anniversary celebrations. He is also one of Korean future leaders elected by the Overseas Korean Foundation. He's currently completing his PhD in Innovation Design Engineering at the Royal College of Art in London. We're really pleased to have Chang Hee Lee.
Thank you.
I will tell you when it's 5 minutes. 3 minutes.
So thank you. So I'd like to talk about synesthesia research from a designer's point of view, or let's say design engineering point of view. So there are many synesthesia research covering perspective from the field of science and fine art, music, but I believe a very little amount of debate exists in synesthesia research, particularly within the field of design and creative engineering. So I'm currently almost completing my current doctoral research at the ASA in London, and my research focuses on creating different approaches, or let's say methods, of applying this phenomenon of synesthesia as inspirational sources for creative idea generation process. So there are many creative practices exist relevant to synesthesia until today from all different disciplines, from collaborative projects between science and art, as well as in design, in music, in animation, performance, and many other different areas since the middle of 18th century. Some projects allow people to sniff time, some projects visualize music so people can interact, some allow blind people to see images using vibration techniques. There are all different types of projects from all the various degrees. And from design engineering perspective, the subject of synesthesia links or inspires different topics from the idea of sensory substitution, data translation or sonification, material transformation, artificial sensory applications, qualitative interfaces, and many other potential research areas. So I was quite interested in how these provocative qualities of synesthesia can actually inspire different creative understanding and ideas, but there wasn't sufficient amount of literatures covering these elements widely, particularly within the field of design, although there were a large number of projects exemplifying or mimicking the experience of synesthesia and try to translate one experience to another experience, and the debates are currently relatively few. What I mean by translation here is, I believe whoever is researching synesthesia knows translation within the synesthetic context. So let's say, for example, this is one of my previous projects called Essence in Space. It transforms or materializes a piece of music into a bottle of fragrance. So it basically tries to mimic the experience of synesthesia and attempt to deliver the quality of synesthesia to the general public. So as you have seen some example works and many other works in the previous slides and during the past several decades, as well as one of my works here, there are quite a few creative practices try to deliver the translated quality of synesthesia. Other approaches of synesthesia application in the field of design, particularly industrial design, is that it tries to study synesthesia to learn and gain insights to maximize or optimize sensory experience between the user and mass products. So they want to use or adapt the idea and phenomenon of synesthesia to investigate best user sensory experience, which I think Ning Hui have mentioned about that at the end of the presentation. So for example, vacuum cleaner has a number of different features that tries to interact with different user experience. The visual appearance of its body may indicate its possible capacity, sufficient or insufficient hose flexibility, high or low mobility, and accessibility of switches. The sound produced when the vacuum cleaner is operating may allow users to interpret the suction power and cleaning efficiency, and the suction sound may also reflect a leaky hose. And during its operation, the vacuum cleaner may dispense an unexpected smell, which may also indicate overheating. So the idea here is that it wants to create an easy interpretable, good-looking, feeling good, and sounds appropriate gadgetry to create a best optimized sensor user experience by connecting and harmonizing each sensors for effective sensory communication between product and users. I'm not mainly interested in creating synesthesia-like creations, just like the examples and images I have shown in the previous slides, which they try to adapt the subject synesthesia to influence and shape the external value of things to communicate with external audiences. I am more interested in how provocative intangible properties of synesthesia can evoke and encourage our thoughts to facilitate creative ideas generation process. So in order to facilitate creative ideas through different property or characteristic of synesthesia, I have conducted a project called 3 Studies of Synesthesia to firstly find out and explore some of the useful properties of synesthesia that may potentially encourage our creative thinking. So I've designed these 3 props, and these 3 props were designed to study some of the provocative elements of synesthesia. This is the first study, which I also call as a prop 1, that I created while I was exploring the idea of translative property of synesthesia. So if you investigate the amount of creative practices that tries to embrace the subject synesthesia or quality of synesthesia, many of them try to use this translation property as usage of synesthesia in their creative practices, which I consider one of key properties of synesthesia that inspires different creative thoughts and imagination. So I wanted to reflect and share this translative property by designing an artifact for better articulation. This simple prop, or let's say interface or display, imitates and mimics the translative property of synesthesia by considering how weight and scale could be associated with each other. So the liquid between the 2 transparent structures immediately expands its surface according to the pressure received on the glass surface. So the heavier the weight or pressure, the more the surface expands. This is the second study, which I call Prop 2. The second study, Prop 2, that I wanted to reflect and question the difference between our mental images and the real images of taste. So this prop allows people to taste actual electricity. So I was interested in the taste of vocabulary word electricity, as some people actually taste this vocabulary, and conceived the idea of allowing people which non-synesthete to taste the real electricity to see and feel the distance between the real and surreal image of taste. As I thought the property of mental imagery is one of significant part of synesthesia that can possibly influence our creative speculations for idea generation purposes. This is third study, Prop 3, that I wanted to reflect the property of narrative of synesthesia or stories of synesthesia. So there are all different types of synesthesia, and stories and narrative exist even with a single type of synesthesia. And I have considered story of synesthesia as creative materials that can potentially intrigue our thoughts. So Prop 3 is creation that I designed this through a narrative or story of anger-related synesthesia. It was driven by this story, which was provided by a potential synesthete, and I wanted to know whether the narrative of synesthesia itself can inspire random creative ideas. So in his story, he sees some sort of colors, fires coming at his face whenever he feels extremely angry, and when it goes super intense, he won't be able to see much for a while. So I literally mimicked it and materialized this story and created a mini apparatus that allows users to load their angers and blow it up. So it was inspired by the narrative of anger-related synesthesia and its level of intensity. Throughout the exploration of these findings, 3 creative properties of synesthesia through my own lenses, through my own perspective and lenses as a designer and as a design engineer, it raised me another question of how I can actually use these properties to encourage other people's creative thought and thinking. So I then began to create a toolkit, which I call Synaesthetic Provocation Toolkit, that may help to apply its properties of synesthesia for ideas generation purposes. First tool that I created within the Synaesthetic Provocation Toolkit was 20 different cards, which I call Translation Tool, that allows people to play with 20 different cards to find out their own different translative possibilities. So people can use and play with these 20 different cards to create their own combinations of translation. For example, if you combine taste and sound card, this means taste can be translated to sound and vice versa as well. And also they can be simply be motivated by each card without combination if necessary. Cards are linked to different types of synesthesia based on some of lists, including Sean A. Day's synesthesia list, but some cards were based on people's stories of synesthesia and experience of synesthesia. For example, stress is not a part of synesthesia, but may be a part of emotion. Energy is not a part of synesthesia as well, but some may experience energy-like graphic or color in their synesthetic experience. The second tool was the narrative tool, so I wanted to know whether stories of synesthesia can be useful in generating creative ideas, just like the idea that I created, this Props 3, the angry explosion. So I've mixed different stories of synesthesia and created a book-like textbook so people could actually access to these stories of synesthesia because they are generally unfamiliar with these stories, unlike us. The third tool was a mixture of 5 different tools, so each tool can be used to stimulate sensory information of users or workshop participants. So 5 tools interact with 5 different traditionally recognized senses: taste, sight, touch, smell, hearing. So for example, participants can use smell tool to assess and influence their sensory information to provoke potential creative thinking and imagination. Unlike the translation card tool or narrative tool, these 5 tools are designed to be used by participants without processing any particular action, such as combining cards or reading the text. The reason behind this is that I wanted to influence our thinking by shaping and assessing our sensory information in a very, very intuitive way, especially given that the other 2 tools were relatively unfamiliar and therefore difficult to understand, especially such as the narrative tool. So using these toolkits, I have conducted several workshops in different institutions to see whether my toolkits are helpful in facilitating creative ideas. So these are some of creative themes or tasks that I wanted the student to conduct as a creative exercise. So these creative exercises include topics such as designing sensory abilities for robots, designing surprising gift as a birthday present, and more various subjects including designing instruments to defense capability of military weapons, which is absolutely nonsense. One of the workshops that I conducted with postgraduate students at the Royal College of Art was to design a surprising gift for a friend's upcoming birthday gathering. So participants used provided synesthetic toolkit to generate different inspiring ideas to handle this task. So this was one of participant Daniel Coppin's idea, where he designed a surprising gift for his friend by combining touch and smell cards, where the touch card triggered him the concept of button, and the smell card literally triggered the idea of smell. So this surprising gift is a very strange vending machine that creates a smell of ramen when someone inserts a coin and presses a dispense button. So Daniel's concept of the machine was inspired through combining the 2 cards and also motivated by his close friend's upcoming birthday gathering, which was within the coming week, and Daniel wanted to create a special gift for his friend who loved to eat pork noodle ramen when traveling across Japan. So by designing this unusual machine, Daniel wanted to trigger his friend's joyful memories of traveling in Japan through the smell of pork ramen, which sounded enough surprising as a present gift. It's a very simple machine. Inserts a coin and blinks up, and you presses the button and smells comes out. It's a rapid prototype sort of idea, and it's created by a student. So the smell is coming out. So I've also challenged this task myself to create a surprising birthday gift for my wife. create my birthday gift for my wife to see potential functionality of the toolkit to myself. I came up with an idea of surprising toy as a birthday present while playing with some of the cards here. So the toy is called Silence In, and it's a very strange device or toy or lighting that operates only within maximum silence. So this means it only functions in zero sound, but also in a hidden dark place. Additionally, there must be no human or human-like motion surrounding this device in order to operate its function. This means no one can actually see its operation near, as it requires no sound, no light, no human, nothing around, and it must remain alone. So practically speaking, people can only sneak and hide away, far away, to see its hidden performance, which I consider that unusual interactivity as some sort of joy or playfulness. So whenever it operates, it has a special dichroic prism under the stepper motor and rotates slowly and reflects the given lighting and provides wonderfully various prism colors, but no one can actually see that. This is demonstration, and in order to demonstrate, I had to remove all the sensors, as otherwise I won't be able to near close and film this demonstration clip, as it must remain alone to perform. This was another workshop that I held at Carnegie Mellon in Pittsburgh. So this was a task to create different sensory abilities for robots. So this robot is called Robot X, who does not have any ability to perform any function or recognize anything. So students have to use the toolkit to shape and design sensory abilities for this robot to create any type of robot. So it could be literally like a vacuum cleaning robot, musician robot, security robot, and so on. Some of images of processing, students designing their ideas using sketches and toolkits. So this was one of example ideas by a student, Joseph, at Carnegie Mellon. He combined the orgasm and color card to design a chair that pops a balloon with colors when having a good night's full stretch on this unique chair. This is another creation by a student, Jasper, by combining two cards, paint and color. So this was a bow-tie rolling robot that can help people with fashion and clothing by detecting colors. So this robot has an extreme sensitivity to fashion and feels pain or shock if it discovers a human wearing bad-looking, unbalanced clothing. So it's a very strange robot that offers an unusual interaction between user and artificial intelligence. This is other creation. It's a firework bot where the participant came out while combining color and paste card. So this robot, or let's say a device, sits in front of you and shoots out tasty color mist that enhances your food experience. So these ideas may sound very silly. Some may feel fun, ridiculous, unexpected, perhaps innovative in a way, or provocative. But what I'm trying to say is that intangible property or characteristic of synesthesia could potentially facilitate creative understanding and provocative thinking. Not just creative ideas, but also evolve creative debates, such as in the realm of human-computer interaction, and also studies like data physicalization. So if you see on the left, it's a paper from widely known Human-Computer Interaction Journal, ACMCHI. And this paper is proposing the idea of qualitative interface and display, which try to seek new opportunities for information presentation within this digital era. So in this context, they are using my weight and scale prop as possible case studies of qualitative display, which I initially never thought about this two relationship. This prop also has been covered in the list of data physicalization and physicalization, as the community thought the prop shared the capability of translating or transforming information and data in a tangible form. So I'm trying to expand the application level of research, and instead of focusing on perception and experience of synesthesia, as I believe there is emerging comprehensive interest and inquiries emerging in synesthesia research to explore opportunities beyond the mere scientific analysis and research setting, which I believe my research could potentially contribute and facilitate future debates and further interdisciplinary studies in relation to its creative context within synesthesia research. That was the end of my presentation. Thank you for listening.